You essentially said that the technology platform may end up being concentrated, but that's okay because the thing that makes people want to do something is really about the storytelling, the character-filled IP. You, Deb, your company seems to have benefited from this in Japan. I mean, a 19% increase by hooking onto Pokémon GO. Bryan, you talked about storytelling. So I guess the question I want to ask is, okay, does that mean you're all not really worried about concentrating platforms, that there's more than enough room for everyone? That seems extraordinarily optimistic. Deb?
Well, I'll go first because I think what Kevin was talking about is we have to stay focused on the fundamental needs of people. You know, and they want something that's simple. So the concentration of platforms, in one sense, you know, everything we look at, we see people, they're much more comfortable when things are consistent in one way, like where the user experience is consistent and all that. On the other hand, the minute it doesn't fit their needs, they're gone.
Right.
So I'm not that focused on that. I still, what I do think is going to be important in that world is the transparency, the measurements, like kind of the back end stuff, and we're seeing that from all the news that was on Facebook over the weekend, and you know, all of those things. I think the idea of those walled gardens and you know how you really understand between the platform and the advertiser what's going on, that's a whole nother conversation. From the consumer point of view, I think we'll follow them. They'll be where they are, and it's not one platform or 10. It's the experience they get, and then can you deliver the content that they want that keeps them engaged?
Well, there's a challenge to that, and a really big challenge, because again, if I'm thinking about Pokémon GO, and then what you're just saying that, and what you've all said is that consumers will congregate and then they'll leave, like that. That's almost like inventing a new medium every couple weeks or couple months or couple years. That can be extraordinarily expensive for marketers to figure out how to follow. And that's the part that I couldn't figure out as a challenge. How, if people are going to aggregate and disperse and chase new phenomena so rapidly, how do you get your arms around that as a professional? I mean, Kevin, do you have ideas? Because this was going on for a long time before it broke into the open.
Well, I think, let's see. I think relative to consolidation overall, it's broadly it's a double-edged sword, but it's broadly great for people in that what people are looking for is basically other people, and one could argue that one of the reasons that Pokémon GO hit a peak and then started to fall off is that you couldn't feel enough other people in the system in a way that you can on most social platforms or in most games. So the benefit of the platforms that exist is that they exist, and that the people that we care for are on them, and the people that we don't know are on them, and so on and so forth. In terms of like figuring out how to place the bets, I think that the area to place the bets is on the experiences that are happening online that generate not individual activity but group activity, like where there's some line drawn around it, and how that line gets drawn, there's a million ways to do it. But like figuring out like what that can be, like what is it that can bring together people besides location, besides sort of specific affinities. How do you bring people such that they can feel the boundaries of their community and then be part of that in some way?
There's something almost counterintuitive about this, though, relative to the conversation that's been coursing through the digital advertising and media industries for a number of years. I mean, you had it in your speech. It's not about precision marketing. It's not about me. It's about us. But everything that we've been talking about for years in this industry has been, it's about me. It's about getting down to the individual. But all the things that you're talking about communities, about storytelling, about boundaries around spaces is it's just totally different from the primary conversation. I mean, Bryan, how do we reconcile the fascination of our industry with targeting data? How do we reconcile that with what the three of you have been saying here?
Well, I don't think it's one or the other. I mean, just to address a few of the things that you just kind of brought up in these questions is, is it worrisome that there is a consolidation between Facebook and Google? Sure. Do I worry about it, or I think most marketers should worry about it? No. Very simple. We can't control it, right? Consumers are going to decide, and those platforms are going to decide. I think our job is to figure out how to connect with them. And there are different times and places and occasions to connect with them. I think for certain instances, that sort of one-to-one marketing where you're targeting is actually fulfilling a need. I mean, if you think about Google search, you think about some of the different ways, that actually is providing a service to them because they're looking for something at a particular point in time. And so that one-to-one marketing is appropriate. I don't believe that creates any sort of emotional connection or affinity, which I do believe is absolutely critical to being successful. So we have to figure out ways. Marketing has become more complex, and we have to think about how are we going to approach it. It's not necessarily more expensive. It's only more expensive if we do it poorly. It's only more expensive if we use outdated definitions of expense. I mean, Deborah talked about how much content she's creating. I can't tell you how many of my clients still use things like working versus non-working media ratio, which is basically the percentage of money that you spend on producing content or things of that nature versus your media spend. And you want the media spend to be as high as possible towards that. Well, that doesn't work if you're trying to create these connections and do things that, whether it's Pokémon GO or producing more content. So you have to rethink the way that you are looking at how are you measuring expense, how are you measuring ROI, and I think it's a fool's errand for us marketers to try and think about how to predict the future specifically. I think we need to have the right organization and the right teams so that we can predict general trends and then have the right teams in place to react rapidly.